Hey folks, today's episode is brought to you by Pete Holmes, Faces and Sounds, an HBO comedy special. The host of the popular podcast You Made It Weird stars in his first HBO stand-up special. I know Pete. Pete is always happy and chipper, which, annoys me. But one thing I can say about Pete for sure is that he's a good comic. He's a funny guy. In Pete Holmes' Faces and Sounds, Pete shares insights to life's most absurd moments, like filling one's joy quota, what to wear in a fight, how the British deal with awkward situations, and more bits. Tune in to watch the premiere of Pete Holmes' Faces and Sounds this Saturday, December 3rd at 10 p.m. only on HBO. We're also sponsored by Squarespace. Whether you need a landing page, a beautiful gallery, a professional blog, or an online store, it's all included with your Squarespace website. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and enter offer code WTF to get 10% off your first purchase. Squarespace, set your website apart. All right, let's do the show.
Lock the gate!
All right, let's do this. How are you, what the fuckers, what the fuck buddies, what the fucksters, what the fucknicks? What's happening? I'm Mark Maron. This is my podcast, WTF. How's it going? I am enjoying the winter here in LA. The winter takes the temperature down to the sometimes low 50s, maybe even high 40s, and we're all bundled up here. It is chilly, and I welcome it because I miss the Eastern Seaboard fall weather. I miss it. I'm just out here in the sun. Today's show is interesting. There is a theme. There may not seem to be one initially when I lay it out, but there is sort of a connecting tissue. Today we have Sam Pollard. He's a documentary film director, also a film editor, worked with Spike Lee for years, but he's got a documentary film called Two Trains Running. It's opening at the Metrograph in New York City tomorrow, December 2nd, and I hope that the interest in the film will get it a wider release so everyone listening to this can eventually see it. But the way I heard about it was kind of interesting. My neighbor, Adam Hawkey, I believe he works in colorist. I think he does something in post-production with film. And he hit me to this documentary. So I'm working on this thing. I think you'd be interested in this guy, Sam Pollard. It's about the civil rights movement, but it's also about blues music. And so I was like, really? And I did a little research, and then I tracked down Sam Pollard and had him out here to talk about this documentary. I got a sort of a cut of it, not a final cut, but I got to watch the film, and it was an interesting fusion of two very distinctly different but similar. How can I explain it? The movie Two Trains Running. I'll explain that in a minute, but I do want to give a little bit of lip service before we get into it to my next set of guests. Is a doubleheader. The Handsome family are musicians. Now, you probably know their work if you watched True Detective. I believe it was the theme song, Far From Any Road. It was a Handsome family song. Now, the Handsome family are Brett and Rennie Sparks. They're a married couple, and they live in Albuquerque, where I grew up and occasionally go to hang out, see my dad, touch base with the roots of my life. Now, their music is very haunting. It's very sort of gothic folk music, very kind of fueled by the ancient folk themes and stylings, and it's beautiful. And I had several of their records that I listened to, and I was sort of fascinated with because the packaging of the records is beautiful, because Rennie does all the artwork, all the painting, all the putting together of the packaging of the covers, and it's a whole thing. The Handsome family is the music and the artwork is a whole world, and it's a beautiful world. So when I was in Albuquerque, I got in touch with them. I invited them over to where I was staying, Brett and Rennie, and we talked. So that's the second part of today's WTF. But this, getting back to the blues music and getting back to Sam Pollard, I don't know when I first heard blues music, the old style, but it is definitely part of my heart and mind, and it's deep down in there. And there were certain moments in my life with blues music that, even as an older person, where you find new stuff. I remember the first time I listened to those Robert Johnson recordings, and I was like, I don't get it. You can barely hear it. And then it sort of grows with you. If you have the template in your heart for old traditional blues music, it kind of evolves as you get older, and it sort of becomes more enriched as you get older, and you find more in it, and you kind of go to a place with it. But not long ago in my life, I read a biography of Skip James. I'm going someplace with this, people. And I started getting into Skip James music, which is really one of the most sort of unique and haunting, again, I'm going to use that word, blues that you can find. He did the original "I'm So Glad," which I think Cream covered, and it just, his voice was something beyond almost human understanding, and the tone that he got with his songs was something completely unique in blues. Now, this movie, Two Trains Running, tracks. It's very interesting. It's 1964, and it's it tracks the sort of the migration of civil rights workers and college students, down to Mississippi for the civil rights movement, for the Freedom Summer it was called. And that's one trajectory of the film. And the other trajectory are these two sets of dudes who had no real concept of what was necessarily going on in Mississippi at the time, but coincidentally went down there from two different places, one from the Bay Area, that included John Fahey, the guitar player, and the other one from the Boston area, which included Dick Waterman. And they were just coincidentally going down to find these old blues musicians, because at the time, there were these record freaks that had these old 78s of this old music that seemed to disappear. So in 1964, no one really knew, in the collective mind about Skip James or Son House, but these musicians and blues freaks did, and there was this constant sort of like curiosity as to whether they were still alive and whether they could find some of these guys. And Fahey and his crew, coincidentally went down looking for Skip James, and Waterman and his crew, went looking for Son House from different parts of the country in the same basic area, and in the same basic area of the civil rights movement, of the Freedom Summer and the voting rights movement. You move through these, this search for these two blues musicians and the sort of fight for civil rights and voting rights, and it all culminates in, obviously, voting rights legislation and awareness of what was going on in the segregated South. But then it also moves towards, on the other trajectory, the Newport Folk Festival, where they brought all these musicians that had not been heard from in decades, down up from the South and wherever they were, Skip James included. And he performed for the first time. They found him in a hospital, and they gave him a guitar. It's sort of a beautiful story. And to see and hear Skip James at Newport that year was just mind blowing. And obviously all this stuff that happened from the activism in the civil rights movement, sort of all happened at the same time. But I'd never seen these two things put together. And that's what this film does. And I loved it. And the deal is that, this film in particular, look, if you want to see it, it's sort of hard to see it. And I like the movie, and I'd love to help find it a wider audience. So if you're a film distributor out there, you should definitely pick this. You should definitely pick this film up, because it's worth seeing, and it's a great sort of bringing together of two very important narratives in the cultural history. Do you know what you don't want to do this holiday season? Do you? You don't want to be the person who gives boring gifts, right? Look, gift giving is tough, but that's no excuse to just get a dress shirt at the last minute or novelty socks. So instead of phoning it in, folks, give someone the gift of awesome meats. Meats! Carnivore Club is the world's first subscription service dedicated to delivering premium cured meats right to your door. For meat lovers out there, these are handcrafted by local artisans for a one-of-a-kind experience. Like, I just got a box, it had like 4 different prosciuttos in it, another different dried sausage of a pepperoni-ish type of thing, but with a fancier name, some other stuff that was a soft salami that you spread, but it was good. Life is for living. Meat is part of that. If you eat meat, Carnivore Club has both one-time gift orders and long-term subscriptions available. And if you go to carnivoreclub.co now, place your order using the promo code WTF, you'll get 15% off. Head to carnivoreclub.co to discover what you can get for the true meat lovers in your life. Use promo code WTF to get 15% off. And don't tell anyone you got this great gift idea from a podcast, okay? It'll be our secret. So right now, I'd like to let you listen to me and Sam Pollard, the director of 2 Trains Running. So let's do that now. You've been an editor for how long?
I've been editing since 1975, so it's almost 41 years.
All the time in New York?
I spent some time here in L.A., cut a couple of feature films, and some time in Boston and D.C., but primarily in New York City.
Really? Now, like, when you started, like, where'd you grow up? Where'd you come from?
I grew up in East Harlem.
Yeah.
In New York City.
Yeah.
In the 50s and the early 60s.
Really?
Yep.
So you've seen a lot of changes in your lifetime.
You'll be surprised, Mark, how much I've seen.
Yeah.
Sometimes it amazes me, all the things I've seen in my lifetime.
Well, how old are you? You're a little older than me?
I'm
What are you?
66.
Oh, yeah. So you're alive and awake.
Yeah, I'm 66.
During, the 50s and 60s.
Yep, Dr. King, Malcolm X, Black Panthers.
Well, so if you were 60, so you're born, so you're like a teenager.
I was a teenager.
When Malcolm and all that was happening.
I was
down the street.
That's right. Up in Harlem.
And right. And like 15, 14?
14, 15 years old.
And what events do you remember? The tone of what was happening?
You know what I remember? I remember 1964 when there were some riots in Harlem.
Yeah.
Being on the bus, going uptown, ducking when people were saying they're throwing missiles at the bus. And,
oh, really?
Oh, yeah. That I remember. I remember, when Malcolm was killed, and the tension I felt in the city, and when Dr. King was assassinated. All those things, I remember growing up in Harlem. I mean, also I grew up in a community where I grew up loving Latin music and jazz and soul and all these things. So it's a lot of things going on.
Well, in Harlem, yeah, always, right? Because there was definitely a big mixture of ethnic forces, musically and otherwise.
Oh, yeah. There was growing up listening to Tito Puente and Eddie Palmieri and Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and Marvin Gaye and the Temptations, a lot of music.
Yeah, and was it a big family you come from?
Not my immediate family. I had 2 siblings, but my extended family, which goes all the way to Mississippi. My father's from Mississippi, and he was one of 9 children.
Uh-huh.
And then his siblings had lots of children, so I have hundreds of cousins, hundreds of cousins.
So when you were director of a documentary, how does the relationship with the guy the story, how does it evolve? Because the story to me it's beautiful balance. Like this sort of naive, compulsive, nerdy journey of these guitar nerds and blues nerds to go find these guys, alongside of a very brutal of the Freedom, the Summer Project in '64 was a very interesting balance that lended it could have been very, brutal, but it had a balance to it.
Well, one of the things that I have to tip my hat off to Ben Hadeen about is that it was his idea.
Yeah.
He really came to me about 3.5 years ago with this idea. He wanted to do a documentary that looked at John Fahey and Dick Waterman and Nick Pearls searching for Son House and Skip James, but at the same time, he wanted to tell the story of the young white kids who went down for Freedom Summer.
Right.
Now, initially, I thought, as a film editor and a filmmaker, I said, Ben, that's a lot to chew off to try to make those 2 stories work.
Right,
really
yeah.
Intense, really difficult. But he was pretty tenacious about wanting to do it. So I finally got on board, and I started to think, I think we can make it happen. One of the things that can help make this film come to life, and to help that balance, would be to find contemporary musicians to play the music of Son and Skip. So Lucinda Williams, Gary Clark Jr. You know, and then find the people from both the aspect of understanding who Dick and Nick and Jeff and John Fahey was, and then finding people who were also down for the Freedom Summer, so we can have these parallel stories. And the really important thing to remember that Ben made us aware of was that the day that Son and Skip were found was the same day that Chaney, Schwerner, and Goodman were killed.
Disappeared.
Disappeared. So sort of this confluence of things coming together.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating about it is that, you know, that the ignorance of white people at that time, you know, was deep and cultural and had no idea. And these kids, and they were all kids. Like, if I really think about what it takes to motivate, you know, white college kids to do anything, it's obsession and feeling like they got to be part of something. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So the naivete of the music nerds, you know, versus the righteousness and sort of, you know, the democratic thinking of the people that went down to march. Like, because I know these people. Like they it's not that they're ignorant. They're just narrow. They're just kind of isolated.
That's right.
So these guys had no idea what they were driving into. They're just going, we're going to go find these guitar players.
Yeah, they just were on a musical mission.
Yeah, you know, based on nothing.
They didn't know anything.
The one kid, they got something from Bucka White, who knows what he was even talking about.
That's right.
They go down there.
But it was like a seed that made them say, wow, we can go on this journey. You know, and that kind of naivete is what, you know, helped them find these people, you know. I mean, and they weren't the only ones who were able to find people. Mississippi John Hurt was found like this.
Yeah,
I mean,
a couple years before,
really,
right?
Yeah, to bring back these iconic musicians who had done such phenomenal music.
Right, and I had no idea about that. And I like Son House, and I like Skip James. I've read biographies of Skip James. But just culturally what was happening, it was very interesting to me, the detail about how most of that folk resurgence was Irish folk music and British folk music and stuff that comes from that part of the world, and these guys had not even been recognized as being part of American folk music.
No, it had not at all.
It's crazy. Yeah. Now I'm just getting all excited, and the fact that there was actually a time where, you know, the guys who had these 78s were just sort of like, no one has these. This is magic. Yeah. You know, like what
they
is
were jewels.
Right.
They were jewels.
You don't even think about that.
No.
These acts, these guys went to compulsively find, you know, defined, you know, rock and roll. They defined jazz. They defined everything.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just these nerds. And it just happened simultaneously. But I thought the balance of the respect for that art form and then the actual legislation that, you know, that happened within the 2 years of those kids being killed. Like when you come to this, and you know, I know you work with Spike a lot, and you obviously have a history, and sort of like integrating these sort of separate, you know, actions of you know, kind of, you know, privileged white people being pivotal, you know, in moving things forward. How do you balance that? I mean, because there were guys that you talked to in the movie that were like, we got to get the rich kid, the white kids.
Yeah, I know. They're going to be fodder for the things happening.
Right.
I know. You know, it's an interesting kind of challenge as a filmmaker and as an African American filmmaker to tell these stories and to, you know, you're basically putting these young white kids at the forefront of the stories. But the thing to remember is that they didn't do it out of kind of any sort of feeling like they were trying to make a name for themselves. They were trying to, you know, say, well, we can do this better than black people. Right. They did it because there was a lot of emotional and psychological sincerity. Mm-hmm. You know, it was sincere. Yeah. You know, when you have Dick and Nick Pearls and Phil Spiro and you have John Fahey and Henry Vestine, you know, and these guys searching for Skip and Son, it's sincere. When you have these other young white kids going down to be on the front lines, to know that their heads could be beaten in, you know, their arms could be broken, they could be killed, but they were still going down there because they believed they had to fight for these rights. It's a sincerity that's important to make sure this comes across, you know. Yeah, and it's fascinating that, like just in you talking about what you lived through, is that
This is before the late 60s where everything blows open.
It's the early 60s.
Right. So, these are kind of real, the characters and the people that you talk about are real heroes of democracy in a way.
Exactly.
And it was not fashionable. It was not like, we're going to grow our hair out. It was like, this is a problem in our country.
Yeah. And we want to do something about it.
Yeah.
We want to do something about it, which is an important thing to remember. That kind of enthusiasm, that kind of naivete, is what's galvanized people to support Bernie.
Right.
The same kind of attitude.
Yep.
And that's so important for a democracy like America, and particularly in these very turbulent political times.
Yeah. Where do you where do you see, the one thing a candidacy like Trump sort of reveals is just how much hostility and racist driven anger there still is in this country. And they're willing to stand up and be identified if given the right,
platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, as a person who's 66 years old, who's seen a lot, you would like to think that some of this stuff that you hear coming out of the Trump camp, doesn't exist. But I knew it exists. I know it exists. I'm not naive.
Right.
It just sort of saddens me that here we are 50 years later, still going through this same kind of stuff. It's just like, my God.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to change in the 60s and the 70s, but it hasn't,
Yeah.
Because there's, but that's what makes human beings human beings. There's certain things that people emotionally feel, angry about.
Yeah.
And they've found a way to vent that anger now. They found the person who can help them voice that.
No,
anger.
I get that. And it's broad-based anger. It's not all specific. It's just sort of like, I'm fucked, so fuck everything.
That's right.
Oh my God.
That's right.
So when you direct a documentary, because you've done producing, you've done directing, and you've done a lot of editing. So the primary element is organizing, right?
There's two primary elements when you're doing a documentary, particularly like this one.
Yeah.
First is basically understanding what the concept is, which we knew as we developed it.
Uh-huh.
And then the deep dive is what I call importance in terms of historical documentaries, the research.
Right.
Really researching the subject that you're going to do.
Right.
In this case, what was going on in 64 in Mississippi? Who should we talk to? Who were these musicians? Now, me and Ben and David happen to know, we were familiar with Ten House and Skip. So we had that handled, but we needed to understand what was going on in the civil rights movement.
Right.
Who should we talk to? Bob Moses.
Right. Yeah.
Who should we talk to? Dave Dennis.
Yeah.
Who are those people we should talk to give us the inside story about what was happening down there? So, understanding your concept, doing your research, and then deciding who you need to interview to help tell the story, and then what kind of material archivally in terms of photos, footage, newspaper headlines do you need to gather to help make that story visually come to life. And the other thing that's important, particularly for this documentary, a lot of times now people are thinking about, do we create reenactments? How do we make some stuff that we don't have, like the guy searching for Son and Skip, how do we make it come to life? Now, one of the things that came up, and I think David was the one who thought about this, is that instead of doing reenactments, let's create animation.
Yeah, yep.
Let's do animation.
Sure.
Which, we found a company in Europe that had done phenomenal animation. They did, Mark. They did a great job.
Oh, no, it's beautiful. And it's almost got like...
It comes to life.
Yeah.
It makes the film come to life. Because we didn't have anything else.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? So animation was the key.
Well, your only other option is just a montage of stills.
That's right.
Over and over again. Different pictures of John Fahey.
That's been done.
Or else you can do that thing where the guy comes out of the still and floats for a minute.
Right.
And then you put that...
That's been done to death.
Yeah. But I thought the animation it worked. It almost had an underground comic feel, like almost an R. Crumb vibe to it.
Exactly.
And I didn't realize that these stories, they're so tight, they're so close together. It transcends coincidence. I mean, when Ben was laying this story out to you, and you were hesitant when you saw the dates, were you like, "That's some sort of kismet? That's like some sort of weird magical coincidence"?
It amazed me, and I kept saying, "We need to make sure and double check that it's correct."
Yeah, because it's crazy.
Because it's crazy that it would happen. It's crazy.
And then, when they found those kids, when they found Cheney, Goodman, and Schwimmer, that was within, days of the legislation passing?
That's right. After they found the bodies, it was a few weeks after they passed the
Civil Rights Act.
The next year, there was Voting Rights Act.
Right. But it took that. And then like that was the other thing that I think people forget, and that I always forget because I live in my own fucking world, is that there were people fighting hard
all the time
against those acts and those bills. They were like, this is not the way the South is good. That they had it in their head.
Oh yeah.
I see, because I don't, like, obviously I'm not African American, and in order for me to experience the proper amount of empathy, I have to watch a movie like this.
I know.
Because it's not my history.
But what's interesting though is that there's always these forces that are at play trying to untie the things that are happening.
Yeah.
I mean, look at North Carolina.
Right. Oh yeah.
Horrible. Look at it. The governor there is trying to say you can't be a transgender person and go into a men's bathroom if you think you're a man. There's always been these forces that are constantly saying we want the status quo. We want it to stay the same. We want things to not change. That's why people are so grabbed onto Trump's "we want to make America great again."
It's already great.
Yeah, it's already great.
Yeah, and he forgets what's great about it. It's actually progress.
Right.
Moving forward.
Yeah, so it's always these forces, as you know, that are trying to undermine progress.
Right.
Constantly.
Right, but it's like, I guess it's just based on, it's ignorance, but it seems deeper than ignorance, because, like I've been talking about this on stage a bit, that it seems that Americans fundamentally are relatively decent people, because once change happens, even if they were furious about that happening, within a couple weeks, maybe a year, they're like, I guess that's the way it is now.
Yeah.
And they settle into it.
They adjust.
Right.
They can adjust.
Yeah, because it didn't really have that much to do with their life anyways.
That's right.
Ugh.
But you gotta be able to say, okay, let's adjust.
Yeah.
But and I know is one of the things that's difficult for human beings is to deal with change.
Yeah. It is.
On all levels. Change is, even me sometimes.
Sure.
Certain kinds of change in my personal life. I say, whoa.
Yeah. No,
I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah. Don't take that away from me.
That's right.
That makes me happy,
That's
thing.
right.
It was interesting too at the end to see that, that Robert Moses and David Dennis continue to fight the fight.
That's important.
It is important.
That's an important thing to understand, that they didn't stop in 64. They understood that the mission, the journey is a long one. Is a road that you got to keep constantly stay on.
Yeah.
And you got to, and these guys have my tremendous respect for being able to continue their fight.
Yeah.
I mean, here these two men are in their late 60s, early 70s, and they're still fighting the good fight.
Yep.
And that's important.
And it was funny that the guys who were still alive, or that historically the musicians and the music nerds, they went on to create a music label. One of them managed Sun House and Dick James.
Dick became, listen, I don't know if you remember in the film where Sun House mentions Dick.
Yeah.
How important Dick is, very important to keeping Sun's legacy alive.
Still,
today.
Yeah.
If you go to his house, he has a table full of pictures, and a lot of them are Sun House that he took himself.
Yeah.
He is really a man who's kept that man's alive. When I did this blues documentary years ago with Scorsese as executive producer, that's when I first went down to Mississippi and met Dick.
Which one was that?
It was called the Blues Series. It was a 7-part series.
Yeah. I watched some of that.
Yeah. And the first one I did was Scorsese directed, and we went down to Mississippi to sort of follow the journey of the Mississippi music and where it came from. Then
right.
We ended up going to Mali.
Mali,
West Africa.
Yeah, West Africa.
Yeah.
Right. So you track the rhythms.
We tracked
all the way back down
to Mali. Yeah. And so that's when I first met Dick, and I spent a whole day at talking about Sun and how he met Sun. So, this was really great for me to go back almost 12, 13 years later and spend more time with Dick.
Sure. It's always good when people are still around.
I think Dick has something in common with you. He loves cats, man.
Does he? I got a few.
He loves cats.
Yeah. Well, the blues is like, I talked to another guy about that the thing about watching Sun House, and even in the footage that you had in the movie, which I think I had those on videotape. Those were Yazoo. Didn't they release some videos of Puka White and Lightning and those guys?
Lightning Hopkins.
Yeah. I think I had them. But like these were not, the dialogue was not about race. Really, was it?
It's about love.
Yeah, and
lost, man.
Right, but also, God.
And God.
Like that thing about, where I don't know if it was Dick who said that. No, it was the other guy. He said that Sun had a hard time bringing together the God part and the blues part. So there's this struggle when that little key to Son House, when you see him just singing a cappella or with the guitar, that he's doing something that he's not sure God would approve of.
That's right, because he's struggling inside with the forces of good and evil.
Right.
Constantly.
Really?
Good and evil.
Right.
And he's not figuring it out. And what's interesting, here's a man at that time in his 50s and his 60s still struggling.
Yeah. Tap right back into it.
That's right. That's why he had to use that, drink
booze,
booze all the time.
That's right.
Oh my God, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I?
And he was like on some level, when you realize that these guys hadn't played in 20 years, that they got tired of the struggle. They were probably relieved, like, all right, I'm just going to let this shit go. It might haunt them, but when these guys show up and say, let's bring you back to that.
Yeah.
Because I assume that when Son got sick at Newport, it was nerves, right?
It was both nerves, but he had some intestinal problems too.
Oh yeah.
He had some intestinal problems.
That Newport footage, man, it made me cry. The Skip James thing. You got Goralnik there, and I've talked to him in here, and
Peter?
Yeah. And he's like, it was like you're seeing all these stars, and then Skip James gets on stage, erases everything.
Everything, because his sound,
haunting.
His vocal sound is so haunting, so unique,
man.
and so special.
Mm-hmm.
He's so special. I mean, he really is one of the great blues musicians.
Oh no, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So he must have been young when those guys.
He was young, and after he did those recordings, I think for him spiritually it was just too taxing and too emotional.
Yeah.
So that's why he walked away from it.
Yeah, because he's doing something more than just playing music.
Yeah.
It's not like, let's sit and dance music.
Well, that's the thing you got to remember about these blues musicians. It's always more than just playing the music. It's living. It's living and feeling. Internalizing the music. That's why these guys still are so iconic and so precious today.
Yeah.
And for me growing up, in New York City, it took me a while to really start to listen to the blues, After I went through soul and R&B and Charlie Parker, then I came back to listening to the blues and said, whoa.
Yeah, back to the source.
Yeah, went right back to the source. When I first heard Charlie Patton, I said, whoa.
Oh man, like Bo Evil Blues and like that. Does that really?
Oh.
It's crazy, man. And and the amazing thing about it is what you have to mentally kind of put aside just to hear the intensity of those performances still comes through those shitty records.
That's right.
Because even the best recordings sound like shit.
But that's what's so special about those analog records.
Yeah.
You're getting everything. You're getting the hiss. You're getting the noise.
I know. I'm back in it.
Yeah, that's what makes it so special.
Yeah.
We got the digital stuff now, but in some ways the digital stuff has homogenized the music.
No, definitely.
Cleaned it up in such a way that it just feels so, clean.
Yeah.
But you go back, you hear the hiss.
Oh yeah.
You hear the hiss. You say, whoa.
Yeah,
it's the real thing.
So, when did your relationship with Spike start?
It started in 1988. I was producing on a series called Eyes on the Prize about the civil rights movement up in Boston. And one day I was in my apartment and I got a phone call. My son, who was 10 at the time, picked up the phone.
Yeah.
And he said, "Dad, it's Spike Lee on the phone." And I thought he was pulling my leg. And I said, "Jason, don't pull my leg." I said, "Dad, seriously, it's Spike." And Spike on the phone. He had just finished Do the Right Thing. And he was getting ready to do a film about jazz musicians with Denzel and Wesley Snipes called which became Mo Better Blues.
Yeah.
And he had known that I was into the music from a production manager friend of mine that worked with him. And he asked me if I would edit Mo Better Blues.
And why do you think it was, what did you bring to it by knowing about the music that he couldn't get to?
I don't, he's pretty good on the music because his father's a jazz musician.
Right.
Bill Lee is a great jazz musician. Yeah. So Spike knew the music. I think what I brought to it basically was an ally, a musical ally.
Oh, okay.
So when he said to one section of the film, he said, I want to use, and I said, Mingus's Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. And he said, yeah, or all blues, Miles is all blues, and so, and then at the end when we used Love Supreme by Coltrane, I was just in sync because I play an instrument too. So
what do you play?
I play a little saxophone, a little flute.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So, and I studied music, so I know a little about music. So we were just in sync on the music.
Yeah.
We were just in sync because he's not a talkative man.
Spike?
No, he's not a talkative man, but he has very strong, visceral ideas that he knows how to get across.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because he's got a very unique way of working a camera.
Oh, he's he's learned to be, to me, one of the great film stylists.
Oh, definitely.
You know, he's
definitely.
He's got a great visual sense, and his politics is so strong throughout all of his films. You know, you don't even have to agree with it, but it's there. It's in your face.
Yeah,
and that's what makes him so special and so unique.
Now, how many? You did a few movies. You did Jungle Fever with Spike.
I did Jungle Fever, Clockers, Girl 6,
Bamboozled.
Bamboozled.
That thing, you know. That doesn't get enough credit, that Bamboozle.
Well, you know, it's one of those films that I think as it ages, it's going to become more and more relevant every day.
You know why I think that is?
Why?
Because the attention taken and put into the production value and the execution of the minstrel shows.
Oh, they were fantastic.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
Like, because, you know, you literally had to battle yourself.
Yeah.
While you were watching it to not be entertained.
That's right. That's right. It's walking a very thin line.
Right?
Very thin line, because think about it. I mean, you just saw Shuffle Along. It was choreographed by Savion.
Yeah.
And he choreographed all those dance scenes.
Yeah.
In Bamboozle.
Elevated.
And they're fantastic.
Elevated.
They're fantastic. So part of you wants to say, wow.
It's great.
But part of you wants to say, ooh.
Right. I think that, like, to me, that blew my mind.
Yeah. But that's what Spike's all about, though. He never is going to give it to you so you say, oh, it's terrible. He's going to make it ambiguous.
Yeah.
So you as an audience say,
confronted.
How should I deal with this?
Yeah.
That's how he is.
That's the he lets you do the thinking.
That's
and
right.
wrestle with yourself.
He does every time.
And it's weird because, you know, people, like you said, like his politics are defined and they're you know, they're hard hitting, but he's still going to, and I think that's what a documentary should do in general, right?
That's what they should do.
Right.
Yeah. They should force you as a viewer to think about where do you stand on this particular issue.
Right.
They shouldn't say, this is how you should feel. This is what it should be. Then they shouldn't be agitprop.
Right.
They should give you the perspective from different angles so you walk away as a viewer saying,
I don't know if that guy was a bad
that's
guy.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He seemed like a bad guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he maybe not be 100% a bad guy.
Right. So what do you think about this kind of explosion of docs? Like, which is, you know, like, it just seems to be the new thing. It's like you talk to anybody, like, I'm working on a doc. Are you?
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, listen.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of these doc filmmakers who basically working with very little money. It takes them years to get these things done.
Yeah.
You know, but you have to applaud the stories they're tackling, the issues they're tackling, the fact that people, the general public is understanding what a documentary does and is all about, and they're engaging in it, you know, both on the small screen and in the big screen. I think it's great. I mean, I come up in a time when docs were just on PBS.
Right, that was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Now you got them on Netflix, you got them on Amazon, you got them in the theaters. They're just coming out of everywhere. And I think it's fantastic. Now, the reality is doc filmmakers don't make money.
Right. And some are better than others.
And some are better than others, but the fact that they're out there, I think it's great for docs.
And you're a documentary filmmaker. I mean, that's what you do. You're an editor, but primarily
I'm a doc filmmaker, and I love documentaries. Now, you know, you think about you know, talking about growing up in the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah.
I grew up watching Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
I grew up watching Burt Lancaster and, you know, and Kirk Douglas and Joan Crawford. And, you know, so when I got into the business, initially I thought I want to just make feature films. I want to edit feature films.
Did you? At the beginning, did you edit?
I worked as an apprentice on a low-budget feature film, but then the editor on that film introduced me to the world of documentaries.
Through what?
You know,
through whose work? Like, what did you see first?
Well, the films that we were working on together. But then when I started to explore documentaries, I went to the work of Al Maisels, the Maisel brothers, Salesman, Give Me Shelter, you know, Penny Baker, you know, Robert Drew, who did Primary, about the Kennedy family,
right?
You know,
did you ever see that Friedkin doc about the death row in prisoner that he, like, William Friedkin? I haven't seen it either.
Never seen it.
His first experience was doing a doc for TV. It's
hard. He was in Chicago,
right? Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
I haven't either.
You know, but then Michael Apted's 7 Up series.
Oh yeah.
So when I started in my early 20s, when I got introduced to doc, I just fell in love with them.
Well, when you first got introduced to it, did you find that was the alignment that you could educate and that you could further the dialogue about civil rights specifically, or just that you like docs? Specifically,
it was the fact that as an editor, I felt more empowered editing the doc than a feature film. Why? Because when you get a feature film, they give you a script.
Right.
They give you the scenes with the actors, you know, and unless you're really a knucklehead, you know how to put it together.
Yeah.
You know, with a doc, 9 times out of 10, a director or producer would come in and say, I have this great idea. I shot all this footage. I'm not sure how it should go together. I'm going to go away. I'm going to let you wrestle with it.
Yeah.
And I loved that challenge.
Yeah.
At first, I was terrified of that challenge. Oh my God. What if I fail? What if I fail?
Right.
But then I started to embrace it.
Yeah.
You know, and the idea of being sort of the director in absentia.
Yeah.
You know, being able to sit there and shape and mold the footage and give it rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
Became such a exhilarating feeling, even when I failed.
Right.
You know, it was like, wow, I helped make a film.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And I know David must have felt like that when she was doing this film, because she was a force in helping shape the direction of the story.
The editors they're almost all of it.
All of them.
Like, you know, it all happens with you guys.
Always. Always. The truth of it, always.
Yeah, because like all you got, you're just hoping you got coverage.
That's
and then
right.
you go to a guy like you and you go like, I think I got all the coverage. Put a rough cut together and then let's see what we got.
Let's see what we can make of it.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. And then it's sort of like, you got that other thing? I do.
That's right.
So when you started, you were cutting film.
I was cutting film.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine how long it would take.
It didn't take long because
No?
it didn't really take long. It just took a certain amount of patience to know when not to make a cut, because you didn't want to have a lot of little pieces.
Yeah.
So you had to be able to say when you were going to make a cut. It's sort of like, you know, Bresson, the photographer, is talking about the decisive moment.
That moment, yeah.
You had to have the same attitude when you used to edit film.
Right.
When was the moment to
Right.
make the cut?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
You got to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At first, in the beginning, you would be sort of like, you know, should I make it here? It would take you 10 or 12 minutes to make a cut.
Right,
As you
right.
got more experience, you could do it faster.
Right. Oh, right. And I guess it's just like anything else. You adapt to the technology available.
That's right.
Now, like when you do like when Spike does a documentary, right? Did he do Four Little Girls?
He did 4 Little Girls and When the Levees Broke.
Oh, I thought the Real Levees. You did that one too with him.
And the sequel, If God Is Willing and The Creek Don't Rise. Yeah.
Who did the Emmett Till documentary?
Oh, that was Stanley Nelson.
That's a hell of a
Yeah,
documentary.
great filmmaker.
But when you do a documentary like Four Little Girls, which is, you know, a story that, you know, should be retold over and over again, that, you know, when Spike does something like that as opposed to a scripted feature, what's the dynamic between you guys?
The dynamic was a great one. You know, in that one, he said to me, I want you to be really engaged in this, not only as an editor, but as a co-producer. So when we went through the whole research process and finding the archival material, I went down with him on the first shoots, to the first interviews and stuff. You know, he would have a particular strategy. Like after we shot all these interviews, we would go into the editing room for like 2 or 3 weeks straight, like 7 in the morning, from 7 to 12, and just watch the interviews together and talk about what we liked, what I liked, what he liked, you know, and we would do that through all the interviews. And then we would talk about how do we see the film unfolding. One of the first questions Spike asked me when we were shaping the film, should there be narration? And I said, I didn't think so. I thought that the people of Birmingham can tell their own story, you know. So the challenge was to how to make sure we told the story. And it was, again, sort of like what we did with 2 Trains. It was to tell a story of these 4 little girls at the same time as we gave the audience the bigger context of what was happening in the civil rights movement at that time.
Right.
And to bring it together with that church bombing. Again, the confluence of ideas coming to the church bombing.
The horror.
And we were in sync with that.
Yeah.
So it was always this give and take with Spike and I on that and on When the Levees Broke.
And you know, I guess he's coming to you in that situation and the relationship you built as the guy with the experience.
Yeah, that I'd done a lot of docs.
Yeah.
I did a lot of docs.
Did he like doing it?
He loved docs. He loves them.
Yeah.
He loves all kinds of films. You know?
Yeah.
He loves making films.
And then the Levy documentary, to sort of like, you know, really kind of isolate that narrative that, you know, through negligence or whatever, this is, you know, going to change the composition of that city and push, you know, the people that live there and built the history of it out, and they're going to let that happen.
Yeah.
So that was what had to be shown.
That's had to be shown.
Yeah.
And he, you know, again, he's not afraid to uncover and dig into every aspect of an issue.
Yeah.
And that's what makes those films work. That's what makes when the Levees Broke such a great film.
So what do you do with this movie now? What's the life of a documentary?
These films need exposure. You know, they need exposure. They need to go to festivals. They need to go to markets. They need to go any place where people can have an opportunity to see it. We also want to not only get, distribution in the United States, but around the world. Any place that may feel the connection to this music, we hope that someone will want to buy it and show it.
Well, I love the movie, and, I wish you the best of luck with it. What does it take to get it on Netflix?
It takes somebody from Netflix watching that film and picking up the phone and calling Ben.
People need to not only, rediscover or discover for the first time that music, but also to remain freshly aware of the struggle that is ongoing. It's like the Jewish thing. I'm a Jewish guy, and I'm not religious or anything, but that the never forget thing applies across the board. Never forget.
Never forget.
So I hope that Two Trains Running gets distribution so everyone can see it. Hopefully I hope it maybe ends up on Netflix or somewhere where you can watch it. It's good. It's very good. We're sponsored today by Audible, which is great for everyone out there who loves to read but can never seem to find the time. With Audible, get audiobooks, magazines, newspapers, and more. Listen to them anytime at the gym, during your commute, wherever you want. Audible.com has more than 180,000 titles, and their free app works on just about every device. They also have the Great Listen Guarantee. If you decide you don't like the book you choose, you can exchange it for another title anytime. No questions asked. I just threw the word blues music into the search bar. Got a little hodgepodge of stuff here. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, My Life in Music by Judy Collins. The Blues, a very short introduction. I don't know what that is. The New Blue Music, Changes in Rhythm and Blues, 1950 to 1999. American-made music series. Group Harmony, the Black Urban Roots of Rhythm and Blues. You can find stuff. You know what I'm saying. For WTF listeners, Audible.com is offering a free 30-day trial membership. Go to audible.com/WTF to start your free trial today. That's a free 30-day trial at audible.com/WTF. Roots music is definitely something at the foundation of the Handsome family's sound. It was very exciting for me to talk to Brett and Rennie in Albuquerque at the Los Poblanos farm and ranch there where I stay. And I love their records. Their most recent album is called Unseen. It's available now. And this is me and Brett and Rennie Sparks, the Handsome family, talking about music and depression and art and New York and stuff. All right, so listen. When I knew you lived here, I'm like, if I could go to their house, I pictured I pictured a gloomy place with a lot of things, maybe some carnival relics.
It's like that room that Van Gogh made for Gauguin with the enormous sunflowers all around it. So,
yeah, she's done that before.
Yeah.
How'd you end up in Albuquerque?
I'm from here.
You are?
Yeah, I grew up in the Southwest. I was born in Texas and grew up around.
Well, that's not that close.
Well, Panhandle.
Right.
Dust Bowl, Perryton, little tiny oil town.
In Texas.
My father worked in the oil fields.
Really?
So I grew up in Odessa.
Really? No kidding.
Odessa,
So that's
Texas.
sparse.
Hobbs, New Mexico.
Hobbs. Yeah.
Last picture show territory.
It's a wonder I got out. Yeah. I spent every summer in a town right next to where the Last Picture Show was shot in McInerney, Texas.
How close to reality was that?
Very. Too close.
So
it's hard to watch.
So there was literally 150, 200 people in the town or more?
Oh, the town my mother grew up in, where my mother and father met, had a population of about 70.
Oh my God!
They had a Baptist church, and a Methodist church, a post office, and a bank,
and that was it.
But I thought the old men played checkers in the bank. They didn't actually. There wasn't any commerce going on in there.
No, they just played dominoes because the banks failed during the Depression, so it was just a shattered, burnout building where these old men just played dominoes.
Oh my God!
This is real.
So when you were a kid, what was the dream? Just to get out? I mean, what the hell do you do? Like, I know that those towns existed in America, and I've driven past them, but I have no sense of, like, what do you do with the space in your mind? Why, I can hear it in your music now that you bring it up.
Yeah, it's there, and it's where I learned how to sing. I mean, in the Baptist church, I mean, I don't cling to those values anymore.
Well, but that's probably good.
Yeah, I mean, I just, it's all these weird accidents happen to you, and I just kind of stumbled on classical music, and my mother started me playing piano when I was real young. Like
so there was a piano
6
teacher
or so. Yeah,
there's always
a good piano.
teacher.
There was a really good piano teacher in Odessa, Texas.
That would be a lifesaver. Just one person in town.
That's right? Yeah. It's true.
Started really getting into Beethoven and Chopin, and all that Bach and all that stuff, and I started playing music. And then
started getting beat up regularly.
Yeah, I started getting my ass kicked like every day in Odessa, Texas,
by the riggers,
by the jocks,
rigger kids.
Well, I'm Odessa, Texas. That's Friday Night Lights territory,
right? That's
Mojo. Permian high school.
So you were sort of the nerdy music kid?
I was beyond nerdy.
Yeah. there's an album title.
I was the object of derision.
You were the one.
Totally.
There was no other. There was no crew. There was no support.
You were a crew. There was Darren, and there was some other dorks. Big, tall, like lanky.
Yeah.
guy, red hair.
And then where'd you grow up?
I grew up on Long Island, so yeah, the chances of our meeting were pretty slim.
Which town?
I'm from Smithtown on Long Island on the East Shore.
Yeah.
So on the North Shore. Sorry, I haven't been there in a while. But I'm New York Jew, no connection to Texas or Mexico whatsoever. Couldn't understand a word he said when he showed up in New York. It was like he spoke another kind of English. We had. So that was probably the attraction.
My daddy, exactly. My daddy is like, hello, and her father's just
translated all night.
I can't understand a word. Forget it.
But so you went to New York and you met her there. When did you start in the music?
Well, this is so sad. He went to Long Island to SUNY Stony Brook, where I was going to college, thinking because it's 60 miles from New York, but it's Long Island, which is a long 60 miles from Manhattan.
Yeah, it's another world.
So he went there thinking, 60 miles in Texas isn't very far, so he'd be right outside of the city.
It's true.
But it was a
so that you went there for college?
Yes, graduate school.
In what?
Music history.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you
Not
finish?
even apply. Yeah, I have a master's degree.
You have a master's degree in music history?
Yeah.
Well, that's impressive. You could.
Well, that's okay.
Oh yeah, it's a gravy train.
Well, it's like, yeah, I spent like 7 years just not even playing music. It's thinking about music,
right,
and writing music and looking at the way it unrolls over time.
But that informs something.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't
have
really
plans.
I was when I went to UNM,
yeah,
where I graduated from. They were always trying to encourage people, you'll never get a job doing this.
Yeah.
So you should go into music education. And I was like, I don't want to be a fucking band teacher.
You'd be the drunky kind of like angry dude trying to get a bunch of freshmen to read music.
Yeah, now we're gonna learn Rite of Spring.
That's right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
What's that song that
the Baby Elephant Walk?
Baby Elephant Walk.
Right.
Mancini.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like always a stage band number.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's it. So but you're not making music, or you are when you go to graduate school? You went to UNM here.
Oh yeah, I started. I went to UNM and I did all kinds of music. Most of it kind of weird, avant-garde.
What year?
I graduated from there in '85.
From UNM.
So I went to New York in '86.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were doing like noise music? And
it was also in a new wave band that I wrote all the songs for. It was a real new wave.
What band? Just you?
It was a band called Sleep. There's a band called Sleep, strangely enough, from Albuquerque. That's actually very popular. They tour internationally.
But that was your band in the 80s, your art rock band?
It had nothing to do with me, but that was the name of my band, yeah.
Right. They took it later.
It was probably just some weird zeitgeist or something.
I knew a guy who did experimental music that, when I was in high school, changed my life. This guy, Steve LaRue, and he had a band called Jungle Red that played twice a year.
This sounds kind of familiar.
It's just him and another dude who I think has since passed. And
and they would. It involved there was guitars that were taped with duct tape and hit during the show. There was pottery breaking. Fiesta ware destroying.
Oh, so this is an avant-garde situation.
Very much so.
Yeah.
People like that can change your life. Yeah,
they do.
They really do.
So who sort of, and what was your musical background?
The Ramones. That's all. Yeah. They were just a local band I saw every weekend. You know?
Did you go?
Yeah.
You were part of it?
Yeah. I had no concept that there was a punk rock movement. It was just we all liked the Ramones and the New York Dolls.
The Ramones when they were like, their audience was like girls, and before there was a mosh pit.
Like in the mid-'70s?
Yeah, and then I remember going to London in like the early 80s and seeing somebody with the Ramones, like the Ramones, one of their albums painted on the back of their jacket, and I was like, oh my God, it's somebody from Long Island. It never occurred to me that someone else might have heard of the Ramones. So it's like, you from the island?
Uh-huh.
No.
Well, it's interesting how that whole time like how much the American thing did inform the British thing. Like I've only put that together recently. I just talked to Legs McNeil a couple of weeks ago because they reissued a new edition of Please Kill Me, which is the greatest book ever written. And but like I talked to Chrissy Hine, I've talked to people about that when the Heartbreakers showed up in London, it was like a huge game changer when Johnny Thunders and those
That's great.
junkies. Oh, yeah. But you were watching them when you were a kid, basically?
Yeah, it was just, that was local music. And
you go into the city.
Yeah, you go to, you take the train into the city, and then, you get the 5 a.m. train back, and you say you slept over your friend's house, and here you are.
You used to see them on Long Island, like.
Yeah, there was a lot of clubs all over
my father's place, and
Long
like
Island,
just weird little cheap
it was
clubs.
Really a sad moment when suddenly these guys with skinheads showed up and like pushed us girls to the back of the room. But these were our boyfriends for a long time. These were people we just loved.
It was because it was just rock and roll at that time before it got.
Ramone, he did some really pop, beautiful, sweet songs. We were all in love with him.
And he's so like I just watched some stuff. I just watched a documentary on Danny Fields, and they had a lot of footage of Joey dancing and stuff, and he was so sweet.
It's pretty lovable.
Yeah, it is.
I once saw him and his father at Veselka eating soup opposite each other, and it was just so cute because they were just having lunch, but the profile was the same, just a little Joey Ramone dad.
Amazing.
So, did you play in rock bands then?
I played bassoon.
What?
Yeah, I don't know why. I think I wanted the oboe, but I said the wrong name, and then I was too embarrassed to take it back.
But this is starting to make sense, though, with his education, and then you played bassoon, and the sort of like kind of weird, dense, almost atmospheric music you do now. It kind of lends itself towards both your skill set.
Maybe so.
Come on.
Maybe there's some sense to it. But no, I just wanted to have a boyfriend who was in a band. Maybe that was like the height of dreams I had.
When we met in college, we definitely had record collections that
we went to see a lot of bands
Venn
together.
diagram,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you got the Meat Puppets, cool. It's
yeah,
like,
which one?
You get the Minutemen. Up on the Sun.
Yeah.
Meat Puppets 2, of course.
I talked to Kirk.
Oh yeah,
we toured with
him for a while.
that was
great.
interesting.
They are interesting.
Yeah,
because they don't commit to any sound. They just do what they want.
Yeah, they're just.
Not a lot of people do that.
No,
they're kind of fearless.
They're kind of into it.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Trippy shit.
Yeah.
They like.
But and I felt like when I was in his presence,
we
were like in another dimension. Like that was Kirk's dimension.
He's definitely he's one of those guys.
Yeah,
he's got his own time zone.
Yeah.
Well, he's seen it all.
Run.
Well, what other stuff were you guys going to see? Like what other records?
Butthole Surfers.
We used to go see Butthole Surfers, and we used to go to CBGB's.
Really?
You like those guys, huh?
Yeah. But then I think you maybe played me one of your dad's 8 tracks of Patsy Cline, and I was that was it. I was ruined.
Well, there was that time like when everything kind of collapsed, like before the whole indie rock explosion, like before Nirvana.
Yeah.
Like, and after punk was definitely dead, and post-punk was even dead. There was this period that really sucked, and everyone was kind of casting around for something to listen to. And then, you started listening to your dad's old Hank Williams and Patsy Cline stuff, and you're like, this is the shit.
Right.
This is the same thing.
Yeah.
And
I know that's a cliche, and everybody says it. But
I don't know if it's a cliche.
First time I heard Hank Williams, I was like,
but it's a road that leads backwards forever.
Right.
So it's
only cliche to this small community of people that would consider it a cliche. To most normal people, or not normal people, but mainstream people, it's like, you listen to who?
Yeah. Hey, you mean Bocephus?
Right.
I think there's generations of people over and over again who find Hank Williams, who find like the Harry Smith anthology of American folk music, things that are these like gateposts that open up worlds to people. But over and over again, people find them and think they're the only ones who's ever heard this. But we all end up just on this time travel backwards and backwards.
You know?
Yeah,
it's never ending. Like I'm just now starting to get into like I listen. I'm back buying vinyl. You got vinyl?
Yeah, of course.
And like these those Tammy Wynette records, those George Jones records, and the Patsy Cline records, and then these folk records. That guy Hurley, is his name Mike Hurley? Do you know that guy?
No.
Yeah, he's a guitar player.
Yeah. That first album on Folkways,
I don't know
is like destroying.
I don't have that record yet.
Bert Jansch, I just started listening to.
He's great.
Yeah.
It's
then you get into all that Scottish, British Isles kind of stuff.
Next thing you know, you'll be looking at 16th century broadsides trying to read the music.
We've gone down.
I got it. Ready now.
We've gone down that rabbit hole, you know, with the whole English folk thing.
You have?
And, Martin Carthy and
trying to trace some of these folk songs backwards. It goes forever, and it goes across. It goes into other countries and
then it comes
Scandinavia.
Here through Appalachia.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Appalachia.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it must be here from the Revolution. I mean, it must
Scots Irish.
Yeah.
From
and
Ulster.
You can hear it all through the country music.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's wild, man. You know what else fascinates me is the accordion in Mexican music comes from the Germans.
Right.
And Polish,
Why were the Germans in Texas?
They were because
this is good.
Not a very nice story, but the Mexican government paid Germans, Western Europeans to come. You can come have some land if you agreed to kill some Indians. So basically, they were like,
so it's a military thing.
Kill some Apaches, you can have a farm.
So they're kind of like
so these Germans and Poles and a lot of Europeans came and were Mexican citizens, and then they decided, well, we've killed all the Apaches, now let's kill the Mexicans and become our own country. And that's kind of why Texas wanted its independence, but they became part of America. And so that was what the Alamo was kind of about too.
Remember?
Oh my God! See, like I'm glad you're teaching me history.
A lot of people in Texas will tell you, "Oh yeah, my family used to be Mexican citizens," and they think that maybe they have some kind of Spanish roots, but really it's just that their families agreed to
come over and kill Indians.
Sure. Well, and there was money for scalps too. That was when the Mexican government was giving money for any dark-haired scalp, so that was kind of a bad thing.
Even Mexican indigenous people.
Well, if you found a long-haired, black-haired scalp, you could get money for it.
Wow.
That wolf pelts were pretty good commerce back then.
Right. Because there's that bit in which Peckinpah movie is it? The Wild Bunch, where the Germans bring the cannons.
Yes.
Right. But that's where all where all the polka came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mexicans did some good stuff with that music.
Great. Amazing. Yeah. So, all right. So you're not in bands. You're playing bassoon.
She was writing.
I was always wanted to be a writer, which another worthless pursuit in a lot of ways. But
come on now,
didn't know what to do with it. Just
but you do write now. You have books.
Yeah, I do.
Well, she writes all the lyrics.
Yeah.
All the.
But,
I don't write any lyrics.
No, you're the music guy.
I come from a long history of, I think, dark storytellers. So
that's the thing about because I think at least a few records I listen to. I don't know. I don't go back to the '90s with you guys, but they seem to be concept records in that they're whole pieces.
I hope so.
They're records instead of albums,
right? And the last one is that the one in the box?
Yeah, with the animals, yeah.
Oh, my God.
People kept asking me if it was a children's record, though, so it got a little confusing, but it is not a children's record.
It would be one of those children's records that's a life changer.
Yeah. She wanted it to be like a medieval bestiary, but
one of the things
everybody's like, oh, it's a kid's record.
One of the things that informed my childhood was my parents, they had two sets of records. We had either Jewish comedy records.
Alan
Sherman, Tom Lehrer, or we had folk music like from the 50s in Greenwich Village. So they had Peter, Paul and Mary, and they had the Kingston Trio, and they had Burl Ives, and they put those records on for me to go to sleep to, thinking of them as very calming records. But if you listen to the lyrics to those songs, they're usually quite terrifying songs. So I think I made the mistake.
Burl's a little haunting, man.
Yeah, Burl is.
Like I kind of remember him from variety shows when I was a kid.
That voice is quite quite otherworldly. And those songs that he sang were always about, little things happen in the woods.
Swimming in the water.
Yeah. But, and then the whole story of Burl Ives is even scarier because he was the one who testified before like some Senate committee that Pete Seeger was a communist.
He was a namer of names. So
then he became a sort of persona non grata in the world.
Yeah, so he kind of gets swept to the side by.
And then Pete Seeger, so that's really the difference between sort of populist, music about issues and then fairy tale music.
Yeah, it is like Burl Ives saying a lot of fairy tale music is what I would say. And I think you say you
fuck your mind up.
Well, I feel like I've kind of found Burl Ives again in my life. So I was looking for him.
Oh, thanks a lot.
No, in a beautiful way. He's everything to me. That was when I shaped everything about my life, was late at night listening to those Burl Ives records and just frozen in fear. The kind of terror you can only have when you're a little kid and you can't move. You're so terrified of the songs.
Oh, so they really hit you like that because like that was, that's what fairy tales were.
Yeah.
They were these portals into the dark, morally slippery universe of humans.
Yeah, they can open up doors that maybe you don't.
Do you remember a song that just made you go like, oh shit?
What's the little black bug?
The little black bug.
Yeah, the little black bug swimming in the water. That one's quite terrifying. But even like On Top of Old Smoky, the ones that, My Darling Clementine, those songs are really terrifying.
Horrible. People die in them.
Yeah. And like My Darling Clementine, not only is she drowning, but her father's watching her going, sorry, dreadful sorry, but I ain't coming in there to get you. You look so pretty when you're drowning.
Yeah, those songs have become muted over time and don't have that.
I know, because
you really look at them, it's like whoa.
But they've got to connect with you on that level, and they did you. Like I mean, like I know those songs kind of, but I don't register them in that same way.
Yeah, we're not supposed to anymore. We're supposed to just enjoy the pretty melody. But I made the mistake of listening.
I think that was always the point on some level. I don't think they were made to terrify children.
Certainly not. My parents wanted me to go to sleep. They didn't want me up in their room screaming at night about things under the bed. They wanted.
I wonder what the intent was. Why those stories? I think that must come from the sort of like English and Gaelic tradition of living a hard life.
Some of them were like newspaper stories. They were about actual events.
I mean, there may have been
commemorate an event.
I feel like there may have been a theory that if you terrify the child enough, they'll be too scared to get out of the bed. So that could have worked as well.
Or maybe it's more like buying a pet so the kid will learn about death. Like
true.
Buy the kid a gerbil.
I'm not telling my kid about death, but listen to this record, and I'll come back in an hour and see how you're doing.
Exactly. Life is hard. Here's a fun way to learn that.
Yeah, we need that now,
Yeah, and it is important. I think kids need to.
Do you feel like you're on a mission?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I do think that we have a strange reluctance to discuss mortality in America, as if we just don't say it, it won't happen. But
we hide old people.
That's not the case. Yeah, and we're very, we're not even death, but old age. We're afraid to even say anything about. So
well, there was a time where where people.
Grandma used to die in the living room with everybody around her. Yeah,
in a bed the hospital bed.
Right.
Did you have that in your life?
No.
That must have been small town, though. I mean, how did people die in Odessa, Texas?
Well, Odessa was bigger, but in a
playing
small
dominoes
town,
in the bank and just keel over.
You'd go look at them in the church, and then you'd carry them to the graveyard, which is 200 yards away, and you'd put them in the ground.
When did you start making music together?
We were married for 5 years before we ever wrote a song together. And
you were playing your avant-garde
I was
music?
always doing my thing. I was playing in pop bands in Chicago. And
you had a good heavy metal band?
I played in rockabilly bands.
When did you get to Chicago?
We moved to Chicago. She went to graduate school in Ann Arbor for creative writing.
Oh, that's a good town.
Yeah,
it was a good town.
And it's good for that. It's a good program.
It's good music history there. And it's a nice college town. There used to be a pretty good comedy club there.
Yeah.
It was a nice town. It was an easy town to be a kid in.
Good record
only
stores.
So much trouble you could get into.
Yeah, it's a college.
Yeah.
But we wanted to live somewhere a little realer, and Chicago was as real as it got back then.
I like Chicago.
Yeah, I love Chicago.
It's a great place
home.
It's a great place to try to be an artist. It really is.
We're going back soon.
Encouraging place,
How so? Because I talked to a lot of people from the comedy world, but I haven't talked to anybody really about the music world of Chicago.
Well, when we lived there in late 80s, early 90s, it was just sort of deserted. So you could get your own huge warehouse space and open a theater. You could, have a band practice there. You could do whatever you wanted. Nobody really cared. So it was great sort of...
a lot of raw space.
Yeah, we would just go to everyone had a loft space and everyone was just doing their thing there. And it was really, really exciting.
So you had one of those sort of like home/loft/performance environments.
Yeah, it was a dump. It was It was 3,000 square feet, and it was $500 a month.
And you didn't have shows; you had parties. Where people
there were parties and shit. They were happening. Thank God.
They
just
were
leave
parties.
the door open and see if people come.
They were parties.
And who was it? Like, who were some of the people in the scene there? Anybody that kind of transcended?
Hey, look, Liz Fair's here. Yeah. Well, that was when all that stuff was coming up. It was like Liz Fair, Smashing Pumpkins, Serge Overkill, and Lounge Acts was like in full effect with the Club Tweeties.
Oh yeah,
great bands from Drag City.
And everybody in Drag City played there. The Palace played there on a regular basis.
Bloodshot Records, all those bands.
All the insurgent country stuff was coming up at the time too. Bloodshot just got founded. I mean, it was a really.
I get a lot of records from Bloodshot Records. There's definitely a context there.
Yeah.
The Americana kind of. Yeah.
We're all friends, and we contribute usually to their like compilations and stuff.
Oh, you do?
And Jeff Tweedy seemed like he was really inspiring to so many people. He was sort of helping a lot of people.
A big factor in our lives.
He was then?
That was how we met him.
Oh, really?
It was in Chicago,
And did you work with him?
Yeah, and he loaned us a lot of equipment.
His wife passed a demo to him.
His wife ran Lounge Acts, which was the great club in town. And so, through her, we met him, and a lot of bands met him, and he just was so helpful to everybody. Anybody he could help, he did. And he gave a lot of people great support slots, and he gave us all the equipment we used for our third record. He lent us
to use.
So for like 6 months, we got all this equipment we could have never afforded. So
but initially, where was Wilco at that time? What year are we talking about?
This was the beginning.
Yeah.
But he already set up shop there?
We've supported Uncle Tupelo, so we knew him back then. Yeah.
I just met Jeff for the first time.
Yeah, he's a great, smart guy. And so right after Uncle Tupelo, when they'd broken up, he was kind of, I think he was sort of like, we knew he'd formed another band, but nobody had heard it yet. And,
AM just had come out.
Sunville came out, and they were really doing well. And we thought, oh, poor Jeff. Well, I hope he's going to be okay. But he landed on his feet.
He did all right.
He sure did. He's okay.
I know what you mean.
You don't have to worry about him. He's got enough people following him.
Kind of kept doing his thing, and and he kept doing it, and he kind of stayed in that.
But that's
place.
what happens. It's weird.
And that's cool. I mean, on every record, there's some stellar songs.
Like I don't really understand people that stay in a groove if it's not working and they're not being forced to stay in that groove by a record company to be redundant. Like, that. I mean, I understand. I guess if that's the music you play, there's a dedication.
People do what they do.
Exactly.
I think
you can't.
You don't really.
It takes a lot of guts to go all over the place.
Well, I think a lot of people do.
You have to want to go all over the place. Some people
they're expected to do too, which is kind of a bugaboo.
Yeah, but who's expecting you to?
I don't know.
Your audience,
right?
Like I need more up-tempo songs on this record.
I don't know,
because it's going to be boring.
I don't think anybody thinks about that anymore.
I'm going to lose my alternative country fans if there's not enough honky tonk numbers on.
I guess that's true.
I don't do that anymore, but I used to.
Yeah, you don't do it anymore?
I don't think about that anymore.
Yeah, record sales aren't important anymore. So.
Well, I know. Well, that's it. The audience.
That's very true.
The people you're playing to you're inventing them. First of all, they're in your head usually.
Right.
That's true.
If there is guys that are thinking like you, who the fuck needs them?
Right.
Like, those four people sold out, huh?
There is no selling out anymore.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, yeah, but that's like if you have a certain type of brain that's insecure or dark, that, instead of going like, we're doing new things and this is great, you're going to be like, no, that one dude, Stu, is going to be upset.
He's going to be pissed if I don't have the ding,
that's just I mean, this any kind of creative life is so hard to navigate and survive in that you might as well do what gives you joy, because there's no other reason to do it.
It's like you find your voice over time, though, and you stop worrying about shit like that.
You do.
And you say, this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
And you make a decision and you carry on.
Yeah, I'm surprised that there are definitely waves of insecurity that continue to come.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I don't think that ever ends.
It's crazy.
Just pivots, as they say.
Everyone I've ever been jealous of, and when I've met them and talked to them, they're always just as trembly as I am. Oh, yeah, it never ends.
They're all fucking nuts, and they hate themselves, and they're having a hard time.
Yeah.
It's sort of like this disappointing. It's a disappointing moment when you realize you wasted all that energy assuming
when I get to there.
This person's having an amazing life, and you meet them, they're like, oh, I'm at the end of my rope.
Yeah, it kind of made me love all my idols even more, realizing that we're all just doing this because this is what we want to do. There is no...
Which idols, though, did you get to meet where you were sort of...
Lou Reed, I think, was one, especially that, he was somebody. I thought, well, what if I was ever Lou Reed? Everything would be okay. But he had problems, obviously, just like anybody else. And we played some big shows with him. We did some Leonard Cohen shows with him where we were all doing Leonard Cohen songs. So we spent a lot of time backstage because we were all doing like 1 or 2 songs. So talking to him and just
talking about nothing.
Just a sweet.
Yeah,
generous.
Because you don't go up to Lou Reed.
Gentleman.
Was he? Man, I'm your biggest fan, Because when somebody comes up to you, I mean, it's nice and you appreciate it.
Yeah.
But when people come up to you and say, oh, I love you, man, I love you, blah, 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 it's like there's a little spark in you that says, well, that's cool, I'm the shit.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you've heard it, and it's like, this doesn't really...
It doesn't solve all your problems.
Doesn't really advance the plan
right,
at all.
And then you got to be gracious. You go from like, I'm the shit
that's cool,
to like...
man, thanks.
Yeah.
So, when Nick
burden.
Cave, I did the same thing. I asked him about a question about, what are those bells on
Nick Cave?
Let Love In, and he's like, oh, yeah, we had this big thing in the studio.
He was excited.
That's the first yeah. So it's like, ask people something,
So Nick Cave and Lou Reed, now we're getting into the area.
That's the idol area.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into the tone.
There's like a transcendent grace in this music that isn't in the person when you sit down and talk to them in everyday life. They're not shining. They're not glowing.
They're the vessel.
They're just...
Well, they might be an asshole. They might just be a racist.
Regular guys.
Right? Yeah, I remember hearing recently, I heard Loretta Lynn on a show for a record she had just put out, and they started talking to her about politics, and I was
Careful.
like, don't do it. Well, because I didn't, of course she's going to be who she's going to be. She comes from where she comes from.
Of course.
But it didn't necessarily even taint her for me. I would have assumed as much. But
sure. It makes it more mysterious, though, I think, in a way.
If you don't talk about it.
No, I think I'm saying when I hear the person and I realize they're just a person that isn't extraordinary in any way, shape, or form, except when they do this one thing where suddenly the world takes on another dimension.
I use music as a drug in a way. It's taken me just getting older to get into the depth of even listening to lyrics. I like a hook. I like,
You like a more visceral thing. So
I do.
So Leonard Cohen's a lot more intellectual, maybe.
Well, I'm getting there with some of these folk singers now. But I still have to pay attention. You want to feel
it in your gut first, and I think...
I definitely do.
I want to feel it in my heart first, so maybe it's like the emotion comes from me words first, so...
Well, sometimes I'm
going top down and you're going bottom up.
Yeah, I guess so.
But we can meet in the middle occasionally.
Sure.
So that's what's kind of interesting.
That's definitely it. But when did you make the first record? The late 90s?
Early 90s.
Early 90s, 93, 94.
And that wasn't like the records you're doing now, though?
That was kind of, wandering around in the forest.
Oh, yeah?
Well,
but not defining the forest.
Well, the seeds were definitely there of what we were going to do later, but there was a lot of, shit on there, too.
Noise.
It's an interesting document, but it's kind of like, and it was recorded well, but it's like we were under the influence of a lot of Seattle kind of bands.
And you were mentally different.
Yeah, there's definitely a pre-medication, post-medication.
Pre-bipolar experience.
You were bipolar your whole life and you didn't know it, or did it get worse?
It gets worse. That's when it came to a head.
You get caught when it gets worse.
The year after that, 1995, was when it reared its head.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So where it was tangible?
It was untenable.
He got locked up.
Where I couldn't function, basically.
They came out with the big,
where I was a danger to myself and others.
Really? Was it a mania or was it a depression?
Mania.
Oh, you don't get arrested for depression. It's the mania that's going to get you locked up.
Yeah. The mania is what gets you, yeah.
And how grand was it?
I was committed to a state facility.
For what action? What did you decided that made people go, maybe he needs help?
It was a combo. It was combo number 5.
Yeah.
It started out when you drew that little
I was real
pencil mustache.
I kind of assaulted a big security guard kind of person.
Oh, yeah?
In the Mag Mile.
Oh, yeah?
This is in Chicago.
Yeah.
I was driving around my car, drinking champagne and eating cat food.
Totally jubilant.
I don't know why.
You didn't have to eat cat food.
It was easy. It was convenient.
You didn't have time to make a sandwich.
And I was at a place where I thought feeding my body, obviously I've gotten over that was a nuisance and a distraction that I could no longer deal with.
So you had a system. You had a good manic system.
I was going to consume only what I needed to stay
Enough for a small kitten.
and I was drinking that black champagne. It comes in the black bottle.
Oh yeah.
Cheap shit. Freshenette. They sell it wine in.
Yeah. What is that?
So I was at Freshenette.
And you were building a portable recording studio in the car.
Freshenette.
A portable recording studio in the car.
In the car.
So I think you were not
got big plans.
Yeah,
I had a lot of big plans.
He had a lot of diagrams around the house with electricity and pyramids.
I was listening to Daniel Johnston too.
Yeah, pyramids and electricity, schematic diagrams.
Yeah, he had some things figured out.
A beautiful mind. I was working on another level.
Some kind of like psychic battery.
It was weird because every now and then I would hit on something that would be pretty
dolphins and pillows and very strange connections.
Most of the time it's just gibberish.
Yeah.
And then you get to this place where, like you just talking.
And you guys are married at this time.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with this.
Yeah.
You thought maybe he does have something.
Well, the pyramid could be a battery. How am I can't argue with that.
This thing about teepees and reverse cones and vortexes and
also crucifixes were electrical.
Crucifixes, positive and negatives.
Sure, I had
There was some physics involved that wasn't completely crazy.
He created a personal Kabbalah.
On top of everything, I was drinking a lot and doing drugs that were misprescribed.
I think you were prescribed antidepressants, and that wasn't.
They were giving me antidepressants, and
they don't take it down.
That was just taking me over the.
It may have been a mistake, but
so I was fucked up.
Yeah, were you making any music?
That's the thing. People have this.
You don't get a lot of work done in that phase of life.
You got diagrams.
Since I made this public, you always get this thing. Oh, you must have got a lot done when you're. You don't get anything done.
You don't.
And it's this. It's like you mentioned Byron. It's like this whole, fiery genius, crazy,
some people can't sustain that.
diva who. That's a dangerous ideology to me.
Is.
My advice is. Take your meds.
You're right, especially if you're the only one that thinks that.
Yeah.
Right, because when you're
mental hospitals are not full of artists.
They're full of really
people.
tortured people.
Yeah,
and it's hard to get work done when your brain is totally disconnected.
Do you remember the elation of it?
Oh yeah,
yeah. And so you were in the hospital for a while.
2 weeks, yeah.
And they got you level.
Yeah.
Well, he kept saying to me, he seems like he's, pretty rational, but he keeps talking about that he's going to tour Europe with his band. I was like, no, that one's actually true. The rest about the batteries and the pyramids isn't true.
I've got to get out of here, Doc. I'm supposed to tour. I'm supposed to go to a tour of Germany. And it was like, he's clearly still delusional.
That was the real part.
That's catch-22 situation.
So now you have a new record coming out?
We do, yeah, September 16th.
It's going to be in a big, pretty box?
Yes, I hope so. The LPs are on their way. I would have brought you one, but we will send you one.
Vinyl's getting hard to do lately.
We got a transparent green vinyl on the way, but
everybody's doing it.
Very slow. Those vinyl factories are way back up.
See-through green vinyl.
Yeah, it's pretty. I like it. I'll get one. So how many records did it take? So the first record was post you being properly medicated?
No, before. We had two before.
Two pre-medication records.
Yeah.
And then after you leveled off, was that when you sort of found the groove that you kind of built on?
I think medication, without it, we wouldn't have a band. We wouldn't have a marriage. For both of us, I'm on medication too, so it's not just him.
Well, that's nice. And you can have something to do together in the morning.
We shop for pill cases together. That's right.
You'll buy pill boxes,
And I think I do think it's important to realize that medication can save people's lives. It's
No, absolutely.
There's some really amazing drugs out there. Not all of it is necessary, but for us, it's been the difference between life and death, for sure.
And you can function, and if you don't romanticize the madness.
Yeah.
Well, that's the hardest thing, I think, for the bipolar thing, is like you like the manic.
Yeah, but
kind of miss it. I'm nostalgic
but
for
he got far enough into it where it wasn't fun anymore.
Scary.
You were on fire.
Still, it's like the waves are like this. Small waves.
The roller coaster wasn't fun anymore.
Instead of like this.
Right. I get it. It's a few days.
I still have mood swings.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're always going to be bipolar.
Essentially, it's about the work, too. I mean, when you make a record, it's not... I mean, and I record I write the music, I record it, I basically play almost everything. So it's like, this is work. This is not some...
Right.
No, you got it. Nonsense, And
you've got fans now, and you've got people that enjoy the records. So you got to do the work. It's your job.
Yeah.
But now, we enjoy doing the work.
Of course. So you're artists, so that, I'm not saying.
I enjoy being sane is what I'm saying. It's not like a...
But then you can at least manage it, and your limitations, and know what you like to work within. So, like on this record, the last record, as you said, was sort of an animal record.
Yeah.
Because I had the songbook. Like, it's weird because I don't know you guys that well, but I was very obsessed when I couldn't find my Handsome Family songbook. I was like, that thing's a real thing. I need to. Where is it? Where did I put it? Like, I have because there's certain records where I'm like, I'll listen to it, but then I'm like, that's a precious item.
Is it like the blue book?
Yeah. I don't know where it came from. Was it in the box?
We probably sent you a bunch of things.
And I was like, this is important.
Yeah, it's cool. It took forever to do that because it was before like Pro Tools.
Oh, really?
And, so I had to use this. It was a mess.
It's not. I just feel like our songs, the way we write songs and the way we want our songs to be perceived, I want them to be things that other people can sing. That they're not about us. They're just about songs that should live on, be bigger than us.
But also, they are simple to a point. But the sound is kind of you do whatever is left from the darkness. There is a haunting quality to the music. And not in a bad way, in an atmospheric way.
How could haunting be bad?
Well, I mean, they're not Burl Ives scary, but no.
We got work to do then.
No, they are.
No, I like classic rock and classic country. Those are probably my biggest.
We like songs, I think.
Right, but there is a tone that you guys seem to get.
Sure.
And you're aware of that.
Awareness.
You do what you do, I think that's really all you...
It's probably pretty deliberate.
So how are you working? You record all over at your house, and you have a studio set up? Are you an analog freak, or what do you do?
I get a lot of analog outboard gear, but it all goes in the box.
You have to, right?
I don't have. I can't do tape.
Yeah.
It's too expensive. It's too hard to maintain.
Yeah.
I do appreciate the importance of warming the signal up before you go in. But in this day and age, it's like...
It's silly not to pretend computers don't exist.
Everything's going to get dithered down eventually to digital anyway.
Because that's how everyone's
listening on earbuds from YouTube on their phone.
Everybody's going to be listening to the record on Spotify at 128K, like MP3 quality. So to spend that kind of money to do it analog is kind of...
crazy.
Although I appreciate the fetishistic aspect.
I wouldn't take that away from somebody if that's their thing.
It's cool.
Well, it's funny because Jack White will make those direct to acetate records, but there's always buzzes and fucked up things on them.
But that's part of what you're looking for.
I don't mind it, but you do notice it, and you're sort of like, oh, that's just a live performance. I guess that buzz is going to be all the way through this record, and it's kind of cool.
Ambiance.
Yeah. So what's the new record? Is it a whole piece?
Yeah, it's mostly about colors, and was my basic theme. But yeah, it's stories about things that aren't easily seen, things that are just on the edge of visibility. So,
like for instance,
the title says it all. Basically.
Maybe, I don't know if you remember. Have you been to the State Fair here when you were a kid? Did you remember seeing this world's smallest horse, Tiny Tina?
Tiny Tina.
Well, every year I went.
It's about her.
There's a song about Tiny Tina. So 75 cents for a few years, $1. They went up to $1, and I still didn't go. And then one year I said, this is the year I'm going to go see Tiny Tina, and then she wasn't there.
Oh, no.
So I never saw Tiny Tina.
I was obsessed with Human Oddities. So when I was a kid, when Ronnie and Donnie were still touring, the Siamese twins.
Oh, really?
I saw Ronnie and Donnie. Wow. I saw the world's smallest man there. I saw the guy with the elephant feet. I saw, in Human Oddities, they're not easy to come by. It was sort of the end of it. I saw the Wild Woman. That was sort of a sad moment because it was just a little woman who was in a box.
It's a job.
Well, that was it. That was the funny thing.
The box is the killer.
No one was going to see her. They just weren't interested in her. But I went, so I had tickets, and I walked up the ramp to look in, and she was just doing organizing some stuff over in the corner. And then she turned around, and she saw me, and she kind of went like, "All right," and she picked up a snake and went, "Yeah." Thanks for the show. I appreciate it. But the Ronnie and Donnie, that was trippy, man, because they would just sit in their trailer. They had a fully furnished trailer, and they were living Siamese twins. Wow. And they were just sitting there watching television. And you would just go like, what? And they'd have it fairly visible where they were connected, but they wouldn't look at you or nothing. They'd just sit there and watch TV. And the world's smallest man was like about the size of a slightly large basketball, but he had that weird crippling ailment. I don't know what it was. And he would sit and talk to you. And you'd ask questions. And then the guy with the feet, you know, he had these huge deformed elephantiasis feet. And the toes were all mangled and weird.
This was the only job he was going to get then.
Right. And he was wearing like a loincloth, and you'd walk in, and he goes, you can touch him. And I'm like, no.
It's $5 extra to touch him. But
I'm good.
Yeah. And then the babies in the jar exhibit, that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, I remember that at White City down by Carlsbad Caverns. Or like the Thing. There are places like that all over.
Like the roadside
These
attractions.
things are disappearing. I mean,
I
don't know
they're getting cleaned up, and people are like, "Oh, you can't do that."
Well, they rarely took care of them too, because you go to those roadside museums, and a lot of times they're all dusty and
it's
gross.
nonsense.
I'm often afraid that my garage is going to start looking like that if I don't keep it. Just this weird attraction that used to be relevant. Oh well. So we got the Tina song.
Yeah, but did you see Tiny Tina?
I didn't. I did say I saw Tiny Tina. Yeah.
Compared to the world's smallest man, I mean, would the smallest man be able to ride her? What size are we talking?
He would have, but it would have been awkward because he wasn't like Tom Thumb. He wasn't a dwarf. He didn't have dwarfism. He had something else.
So he wasn't a horse rider. But
I didn't look like a horse rider. No.
I regret seeing her, but I don't regret seeing her. You know,
that's like so much in life.
Diffidence.
And what's it going to be called? The album?
It's called Unseen.
Yeah, it's like about
there's some historical stuff about William Crookes, who's one of my favorite scientists, who basically designed a vacuum tube in late 1800s in Victorian England to try to capture ghosts.
Yeah,
it was a ghost cage.
That's the origin of the vacuum tube.
Really?
So guitar amps are really ghost trappers.
He put a filament inside a vacuum tube and moved it around the room, and when he became excited, he was like, "Oh, there's a spirit." But what he was really detecting were like ions in the air or other kind of RF.
But so he wasn't really wrong.
No, he wasn't wrong.
Not really.
No.
I mean, that turned into the tube, which
who's
to me is
that we all just bought again. We're back to ghosts in the glass.
The ghosts get a kickback from it, so they're making money on the other side.
Well, thank God. Thank God. I knew there had to be a conspiracy to the return to analog, is that the ghosts needed money.
Yeah.
Well, it was great talking to you guys.
Yeah. It was a real treat.
That's your doubleheader WTF. All right? Go to WTFpod.com for all your WTF pod needs. I'll be in Chicago this Saturday, day after tomorrow, if you're listening to this on Thursday. I think there's still tickets available for the second show. I believe there is. You can go to WTFpod.com/tour to get a link to those tickets. Thanks again to the Carnivore Club for sponsoring us today. Carnivore Club is a cured meat of the month club that delivers great meats right to your door. It's a great Christmas present, especially to those hard to buy for people that you know. Head to carnivoreclub.co and use my promo code WTF for 15% off. That's carnivoreclub.co, promo code WTF for 15% off. I'm not going to play guitar today because I got to go do some painting. I'm going to help my buddy paint my bedroom. All right? Okay. Boomer lives!